Hey everyone, welcome to this week's reading of Shard of the Sun. We're picking up where we left off with chapter 10, so I'll just jump right into it. Murderer! She cried as she rushed him. Nobody moved to intercept her, perhaps too startled to realize what was happening. She jumped onto the table and ran toward Morrill, kicking up papers and spilling ink vials. He was rising from his seat as she slammed into him, both of them tumbling to the floor. She flailed wildly, kicking and punching until she managed to roll atop him. She pressed her dagger to his throat. You killed my mother. Emotions surged and roiled within her. Years of anger were swept away by pain and sadness. That event, that horrible event, played back in her mind, and for a moment she was a child again. Tears flowed freely down her face, but then she remembered. She remembered also how he had burned her eyes for having seen it. The anger rose up through the waves of pain. Hate you, she screeched. I hate you. She could hear people moving, probably coming to stop her. She drove the blade into his skin, his blood spurting out onto her hands. She was jerked off her father's body roughly. A man held her at arm's length, while another bound her wrists. She didn't bother to struggle. She had done what she came to do. She had killed him. They escorted her from the council room. Broderick stood in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock. What had just happened? He saw two men take Kira from the room. Those few who were in the room were silent, not sure what to do. Roderick slowly made his way over to the man lying on the floor, a puddle of blood quickly forming around him. He knelt beside the body and looked at the man's face. His expression was set in a mixture of surprise and pain. Roderick didn't know why she had killed him, but whatever the reason, no one deserved to die. He laid his hand on the man's head. After a moment, the cut in his neck began to close. One couldn't even tell that there had been any damage to the flesh at all. Morrill sat up suddenly and gasped in a deep breath. He looked at Broderick. Their eyes met, and Broderick saw the same look in his eyes as he had seen in the others. That man just healed Morrill, someone said. Broderick looked to see several men, priests by his guess, staring at him. He looked from the men back to Morrill. The look was gone. I've heard of you, Morrill said. The blonde-haired healer. Broderick had spent several hours with Morrill and his council. Many of the men were fearful of what the failing of the barrier meant. Broderick knew the shard was responsible for breaking the magic, but remained silent. There was no telling what these people would do if they knew he was at fault. Morrill would not allow Broderick to leave his sight. The warrior priest gave him a tour of the church building and explained what they did to help the people of the city. The more time Broderick spent in Morrill's presence, the more he felt uneasy. There was something about the man that Broderick didn't like. He just wasn't sure what it was. It seemed that nobody had realized Kira was with him. He wanted to see her, but he didn't think it was worth the risk of asking about her. He had a plethora of questions for her. Instead, he asked open-ended questions to the priest. Who was she? Why did she attack Morrill? No one seemed to know. Broderick suspected that Morrill knew more about Kira than he was letting on. He learned that Morrill had been named the new leader of the church, due to the fact that another candidate had mysteriously disappeared in the night. The biggest problem was he had yet to discover any information as to where his cousin's wife was. The note had said to bring the shard to the city. What if it's a trap? Broderick shuddered at the thought. What if it was? What if Octavia's captors meant for him to destroy the barrier? And if that was the case, why? He didn't know, and he wasn't sure he wanted to find out. Morrill finally left his side to see to some issues that had arisen. Broderick was relieved that he would get some time alone until he realized that another priest would keep him company. Broderick began to suspect that he wasn't so much an honored guest as a prisoner. I could use some fresh air outside these walls, Broderick remarked to his guard. Justice smiled, but didn't seem inclined to grant the request. May I? I don't think that would be wise, Justice answered. We have many enemies, and if they find out that our barrier has been destroyed, they will attack us. Within these walls, you are safest. Broderick pondered the words, many enemies. He had a sick feeling something ill-fated was going to happen. Are any of these enemies at the gates? He asked. Justice shook his head. No, I don't believe the news has gotten out of the city. I don't think you've let the news out of the city, Broderick thought. When will Morrill be back? I have some pressing business to get back to. The priest eyed Broderick closely. He lowered his voice. You don't understand, do you? Morrill will not let you leave. He may not even let you live. The last statement was barely above a whisper. Broderick heard every word. Why do you say that? You're a priest. Why would he kill anyone? I've said too much, Justice answered. He remained silent through Broderick's questions, and he decided to try a different tactic. The girl, Broderick said, the one who tried to kill Morrill. Where is she? Justice shrugged. Probably in the dungeon. Broderick was taken aback. The church has a dungeon? That's a bit disturbing. The priest shook his head. It's not that kind of dungeon. It's really just a space for holding those violent to our cause until they calm down. Until you force them to calm down? Justice's look warned him he was crossing the line. I'm sorry, Broderick said. I just don't understand why anyone would kill a priest unless there was something to warrant it. Justice seemed to hesitate in responding. Finally, he motioned Broderick to follow him. Come with me. The priest led him down several passages and out into a garden that was open to the sky but still located within the building. Flowers and trees of all colors greeted them. Justice made sure no one was nearby and sat on a stone bench. You can sit if you like, he said. Broderick declined and remained standing. There have been whispers, Justice said, keeping his voice low. His eyes kept darting about the garden. Whispers that, if true, make Morrill a very dangerous man. Broderick listened intently. There are some who say he is not a man of faith at all, that he seeks only to rule the city. Isn't there a separation of the affairs of faith and of politics? There's supposed to be, but everyone knows the church is really running Ravendale. It's not all as bad as it sounds. The people are safer in our hands than in the hands of a tyrannical man without faith. Broderick shrugged. It wasn't important to him whether that was true or not. Some think this is true. Things have happened that seem like a divine intervention on Morrill's behalf, but many think otherwise. They think he is strong-arming anyone who disagrees with him, and there are some who think he has them disposed of. Killed? Justice nodded. I am among the latter. I wasn't until recently. He made a comment the day before the council was to choose between him and Rayner, the other candidate. He claimed he was joking. Then mysteriously, Rayner disappeared in the middle of the night, and there's no trace of him. Morrill is claiming it is the hand of God showing that he was meant to be the leader. You don't believe him? Broderick asked. Justice shook his head. I want to believe him, but I cannot. My conscience will not allow it. If a man were going to up and leave, he would have taken some of his belongings, at least. Everything he owned was still in his home. It's too suspicious for me. That's understandable. If these things are true, how did he get elected as leader? Justice sighed. There is no proof to all these rumors, and the council is too afraid to stand against him now that Rayner has gone missing. What about the girl who tried to kill him? Justice didn't seem to notice the slip-up. He scratched his chin. I'm not sure. If any of these rumors are true, there is bound to be someone who wants him dead. I know he was married when he first entered the church, but I don't know if he had any children. There's no telling truth from lie with him, it seems. Has anyone questioned the girl? Maybe she could give answers to these questions, and you would have your proof. Broderick didn't care about the politics of the church. He just wanted to free Kira and find Octavia. Are there any other prisoners with her? Justice shook his head. She's the only one. We haven't had to lock anyone in there in years. As to questioning her, I don't know if that would be wise. Even if she had information, how would it look trying to use her word against him when she tried to kill him? Broderick conceded the point. I would like to talk to her, he said. Justice hesitated, but finally agreed to let him. I know it may not do anything to expose Morrill, but perhaps we can learn how she navigated her way into the council room, the priest said. It is a tightly kept secret. Perhaps she isn't the only one that wants him dead. The dungeon wasn't a dungeon at all. It was simply decorated. A bowl of fruit rested in the center of a round table, and a few padded chairs surrounded the table. Kira was sitting at one of them. A guard was posted at the doorway of the room, and Justice dismissed him, took up his post to keep watch so that Broderick could talk to her. Her eyes lit up with excitement when she saw him, but he motioned her to be quiet. We don't know each other, he mouthed to her. She nodded. He was completely direct with his questions. Finally, he asked the one he really wanted to know. Why did you try to kill Morrill? She bit her lip. She looked pleadingly at him, silently begging him not to make her answer. He remained stoic. She cast her eyes down. He is my father, she said softly. When I was a child, he killed my mother. I saw him do it, she said brokenly. He burned my eyes with a piece of hot steel. The answer left Broderick wordless. He deserved to be brought to justice. I made a deal with a demon to find my way to him. His death has been long in coming. Broderick knelt before her. He's not dead, he said. Confusion contorted her face. Cut his throat. I saw him die. He didn't know how to phrase it. He didn't want to tell her. She would be angry with him. You didn't, she breathed. He lowered his head. I didn't know, he answered. He is alive. Her breathing quickened. She scowled at him. Get away from me, she growled. Leave. Broderick rose to his feet, tried to calm her. I have to find Octavia, he said. I need your help. You stole my justice, she spat. Your cousin's wife isn't here. She never was. I planted that note. I don't know who took her. I used you to bring down the barrier so I could kill my father. The viciousness in her voice stung him profoundly. Tears welled up in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said again. Leave me, she reiterated. He turned away and walked slowly to where Justice stood. He didn't pronounce judgment or say anything at all. The priest could tell there was much more to their argument than he could understand. A loud trumpet sounded, and Justice seemed uneasy. What is that? Broderick asked. I'm not sure, Justice answered. Another priest came running. Goblins, he screamed. Goblins are attacking the city. All right, that's it for this week. Hope you guys are enjoying the story. It's interesting to come back to this one. It's pretty old. It's one of my first books that I wrote, so it's interesting to come back and refresh my memory of all these things. So, anyways, till next week, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next Friday.